Izzy, this is my favorite part of the entire construction process. It's framing, you can see the house coming together, you can see where it's all gonna be at. You can really see your home once we have this house framed up, getting it going. This is just really my favorite stage, so I think we ought to be talking about framing and hammers and nails and getting it all together. Like this is a big nail. This is gonna be easy to get pounded into this board.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, I've got a smaller one here, and more importantly, though, I've got to show you my hammer that I'm really proud of. And people make fun of me because it's pink, but I'll tell you what, it never gets stolen.
And I would make fun of you because it's pink.
All right, let me show you how you do a small nail here, though.
Okay.
Now, I've been told that there's a couple different ways to hold a hammer, but the most important thing is you want to get some power behind it. That's supposed to be the bottom here. So I've got my nail here. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Oh, Mama! Oh!
I knew this was gonna happen. Here, you want a
Come
Band-Aid?
on.
What happened?
You need a Band-Aid there?
I hit my
man.
thumb.
There you go.
I can see you guys are really getting the swing of it, but there's a problem here. Hey, first of all, let's start with a stud tip.
Okay.
Small nails, what you want to do is take a thin piece of paper, or maybe a piece of plywood, for example. Set your nail up there like that. Look at this, guys. Look at that. There's no need for Band-Aids. There's the way to do it right there.
Well, that would have been helpful like 2 seconds ago.
Oh, sorry about that. Oh.
Guys, I heard a scream and came running. Now I see what all the mess is about. Hey, it looks like you might need some tips on how to use that tool.
Oh.
Well, first of all, do you know how to hold a hammer?
Oh, sure. What's
Simple
that?
handshake. That's how you hold the edge of the hammer there. So just think of how you're giving somebody a handshake. Grab that hammer the same way.
Okay.
Now, you tried to hit that probably in one shot, didn't you?
Yeah.
So first, when you start a nail, or if you're using a small nail, you actually want to hold the hammer up close to the head.
Okay.
That gives you a little bit more control to get it started. The other thing to keep in mind is keep your fingers up close to that head. That's going to help protect your fingers in case you do miss or in case that hammer slips off.
Okay.
Now, when you're ready for a little bit more power, you hold that hammer down lower, and that gives you a little bit more oomph behind it.
Okay.
So now I mentioned different areas that you can hold the hammer on its shaft. There's also your arm that comes into play. Okay. So you use your wrist more, again, for more controlled hits. And then as you're ready for, again, more power, then you actually start using your elbow, and it gives you a little bit more leverage to get behind each blow.
All right.
Okay, Elizabeth and I are here. We are ready to do our first annual stud nailing contest. Now, I'm going to put one of my bets on this girl right here.
Look at the hammer.
She has got that hammer. Now, you know what? Looks small. She's very strong. So what we're going to do, each one of you guys, I'm going to time you, see how long it takes you to get that nail in the ground, and we're going to put a champion together on who can do this the fastest. Ready? Okay, so Izzy, you're going to be first. We're going to get out of the way for you, but I'll be here. We're going to time you.
How is he putting his
Hammer
money
time.
on Elizabeth?
All right, so you know how to do this. Ready?
Yep.
All right, go. Whoa, not bad. 3.5 seconds. Okay, we'll see how anybody else does this. All right, Tony, he did it. 3.5 seconds for Izzy. Let's see if you can beat that. Ready? Go. 4.7 seconds. Sorry, he's got you so
My
far.
nail was longer than his was.
Okay, Lonnie, now don't let the old guys down here, okay?
No. By the way, Luke said something about keeping the hammer close to your head. I'm not sure.
That's
Maybe
hammerhead.
he may have messed up. All right, I'm
Okay,
ready.
now you got 3.7 seconds to beat. We've got to be easy. Okay, ready? Go. 3.2.
All right, we
So
did
far
it.
the winner.
You guys
Good
did
job.
it.
All right, let me go get the rest of them. Okay, now wait, Luke, you've got the most experience here.
I know,
You
I
got to
feel
beat Lonnie.
a
He's
lot
at
of
3
pressure.
seconds. Let's see how good you can do.
The
You got a
bullseye's
big
on my
hammer.
back. I did bring it a little bigger.
Okay, that's okay. We don't care. All right, ready? Go. All right, that was about 2 point. Oh,
I
my
think there was some
goodness.
user error on that
awesome
too. So.
job. Okay, Elizabeth, you got 0.2 seconds to beat. That was Luke. He did pretty well. All right, with that little hammer, you ready?
I can do it. I'm not going to use this though.
Oh, okay, they're not around. Nobody will know. Okay, good job.
I have the pneumatic nailer.
That's a pneumatic.
Just tell me when you're ready.
All right, on your marks, get set, go. The winner.
You know, that was a great start with the competition, but how about you and I do one? Are you ready?
Let's try it,
Here
yeah.
you go. 1, 2.
Okay, no, wait, guys. Enough done. We got to start the show. By the way, just so
man.
you know, the winner, as well as you did, Elizabeth here, pneumatic gun, and she did less than
She got the
0.1 of a second. Good job.
Pulled the
cheating.
pneumatic out.
Okay, today we're going to be talking about framing. Lonnie, would you go ahead and open up the show
Sure.
for
Hey,
us?
welcome to Between the Studs. I'm Lonnie Norris, and this is part of the Granite Ridge Builders team, including Tony Ranke, our president. We're glad you've joined us today. You know, we're custom builders. We build in northern Indiana, northwest Ohio, parts of southern Michigan. We really enjoy what we're doing, especially being out on the job site like we are today, discussing a very interesting subject, at least to me, framing.
Oh my goodness, this is so much fun. Also, there is so many parts and pieces to framing. I'm not sure we're going to get through a whole segment just talking about framing. But do you guys have any stats that we'd like to share with our audience about framing?
Well, one thing I'll tell you, in Allen County, we start framing 3 homes a day.
Wow.
And it takes 4 or 5, maybe 6 days, which means in Allen County, every day, 15 to 20 new homes are being framed.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
And Lonnie, in each one of those homes, on average, there's about 400 studs that go into it, and about 4,000 square feet of OSB that's on the roof and the sidewalls.
It's pretty amazing too how the lumber gets here. All of the lumber we use is pine. It comes from the Northwest states or Canada. They mill it, they put it on a train. Remember a few months ago we were out at Home Lumber? We saw all the lumber coming in on the train. That was exciting. Then they load it on a huge flatbed truck and get it out to the house and put it out in the front yard.
You know, one of my favorite stats when it comes to framing and everything is on a 1,200 square foot house, there's almost 12,000 nails. So you're looking at 100 nails per square foot when you're building a house.
And here's one that's very, very important for everybody. When you're building a new home, we talked about concrete and stone being between 15 to 20% of the whole project. Framing is about 10 to 15% of the whole project.
Wow.
So it's a very, very important commodity. Now, like I said, we're not going to be able to get to everything today. What are some of the best features that we can try to get done today or segments that you guys like?
Well, I want to pick up from last week and talk about taking the concrete and then attaching it to the framing.
Oh, important.
I like walls myself. All the nomenclature, all those definitions and terms related to a wall.
Well, see, I really like everything that goes on and makes that wall. All the sheathing that goes around the sides and the roofing.
Cool.
Guys, for me, it's got to be the tools and the advancements in tools, and then all of the fasteners. And we're going to talk about what a penny and a nail has in common.
Ooh, good one. Okay, tell you what, stay tuned. I think you're going to really, really love this. This is what we call really between the studs today on framing.
Okay, are you ready to try this again,
Let's
Lon?
try it. All right, here we go, guys.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3. I missed my nail.
I did on purpose. I thought.
Well, a few weeks ago, we did a show all about concrete in your foundation. It was really interesting. Now we're at the next step. We're going to frame the house. So to begin framing, our first step is the bottom plate or the sill plate. This is put onto the concrete. You'll notice here, it's a bluish green color, and a lot of times people panic because it is colored. But it's a treated plate. It's treated in borate, and this is to eliminate rot because it is right against your concrete. Now, we talked in our concrete show about how the framers are the ones that actually adhere this to the concrete. So what they do is they use an anchor bolt. This is about every 6 feet or 1 foot from a corner, so you'll see these throughout the house. So we don't attach it with just a little nail, because this is really important because all of your studs are going to sit on top of this. Now, Izzy, between this and your concrete, we do something else.
Yes, here we have 2 different textures again coming together with the concrete and the wood. So we want to make sure we get a really nice tight seal there that's going to help prevent air penetration and pest infestation. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a layer of sill sealer or silicone sealer on the concrete. Then we're going to put this sill sealant right on top of it. Then on the inside of all your exterior walls, we're going to put another layer of that silicone sealant. So we get a really nice tight seal, and that really prevents all kinds of problems.
So today, Luke, we're talking about framing, and today we're actually standing in brownstone. A lot's going on out here in a home that has just been framed on the 2nd floor and in front of a window that has just been set. So let's talk nomenclature. Let's start at the bottom and work our way up.
Yeah, well, first we're standing on 3/4 inch OSB. That's our ground floor here.
How's it tied together?
Well, each one of these joints, there's a tongue and a groove. So that tongue slides into the groove, which then locks them together, and then they glue and nail it down.
Why does it look like a checkerboard?
Good question. So there's lots of these black lines that go in here, and you might play tic-tac-toe in it, but that is just simply meant for the ease of the framer. So there's eye joists underneath this that's folding this up. Yep. And when they put that down, obviously they're covering the eye joist. So now they know exactly where an eye joist is located, and they can nail it. Or if they need to cut one down, it just shows them, okay, that's 16 inches off the edge, 2 foot in off the edge. So just some quick measurements.
And so let's work our way over here to the wall. It looks like the bottom plate sits on the floor.
Yep, so that sill plate sits right down on top of the OSB. So that OSB runs all the way out to the outer edge, and we still seal that just like we do with the concrete. We seal that up with a bead of caulk that runs all the way through there.
All right, so the window's been set here, and there's a lot of things around this window that we need to explain.
Yeah, so anytime you put a penetration, a window or a door, there is a lot of extra parts and pieces that go into the framing to make sure that all the weight gets transferred off of that window because the window itself cannot support any.
Okay, let's start with, what are these?
Yeah, so those are cripple studs. So essentially what those are doing is it's just helping holding up the weight of the window, but then it's also providing a nailer for our trim and our drywall.
And it looks like the window sits on, I think they call it the rough sill.
Rough sill or a window sill.
Okay.
But yep, that's that piece of wood that goes right underneath the window, and the window gets set on there, gets shimmed and leveled up right on top of that sill.
And do we really need 3 studs on each side of the window? I noticed both sides.
Yeah, so starting at the window and working our way out, you have 2 what are called trimmer studs or jack studs.
Okay.
So they're called trimmer studs, Lonnie, because part of the reason that they're there for is when you put the casing around that window, it gives that casing solid backing to nail to.
Trimmer's going to nail right into that.
Yep.
Okay.
And then as those trimmer studs go up, they attach to the header, which we're going to get to in a second, but it helps transfer that weight down onto our floor
All the
system.
weights on each side of this window.
Yep. And then that last stud that sticks out there is the king stud.
Okay.
So that king stud essentially attaches to the side of the header, but then runs that system all the way up to our top plates.
All right. And you mentioned the header.
Yep, so the header is essentially just transferring the weight of the roof off of that window down onto those trimmer studs that we talked about. Yep.
Hey, a lot of people ask us, what about drapes around the window or in front of the window? How can we attach our drapes? Do people have an opportunity or a chance?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see with that header, it actually extends about 3 inches past the window.
Okay.
So it will go past that, even the casing there a little bit. So for most drapes or any kind of blinds, there's going to be an area for them to screw or nail into. Now, if they do something much larger, like a balance board that goes all the way across there, then we can add, some blocking. But most of the time, 90% of the time, there will be something solid to nail into.
And then, Luke, as we move up past the header, what do we have up there?
Well, let's get to the header first. We didn't mention that that's actually an insulated header.
Okay.
So in any of our windows or doors that are 6 foot or under, we're gonna have an insulated header there. So that way it just helps break up that cold from creeping into the house. On the other side of that OSB, you'll get a thin layer of insulation, then a thick, solid piece of lumber on the outside, and that's what then transfers that weight across. But then, yeah, right above the header, we actually have 2 top plates. The first one's called the top plate.
Okay.
The second one's called the double top plate.
The double top plate. That makes sense. And then it looks like something sits on top of the double top plate. What is that?
Yeah, so there's a 2x6 that sits on top of that, and essentially what that does is when we run the drywall across the ceiling, it gives us a place to nail or screw that drywall into. So it's essentially just a nailer.
At the end of the day, everything makes sense. So Luke, we got up to that double top plate. Let's talk about what sets on the double top plate.
Yeah, so essentially that's our ceiling, and we have ceiling joists that run through there. So you can see those that are running horizontal right above our head. That sets the ceiling height. That's the ceiling joist. And on the attic side, that all gets covered up with that blown-in insulation.
So on this side, the drywall would actually hang on the joists.
Yep.
And then we blow in the insulation between those joists. Okay.
Absolutely, yep. And then we got another set of boards that are actually running at a diagonal. And those are our roof rafters. We don't do trusses typically unless we have to, but we use the roof rafters. Great way to frame. There's a lot of flexibility and can get some really unique roof lines in there. But those are the ones that essentially set your slope of your roof. So on the other side of that would be your roof shingles.
Okay, and we can see the OSB. And what are those little clamps between?
Yeah, those little black things, those are actually what we call H-clips. And those are spacers because that roof deck during different times of the year is going to want to expand and contract. That allows that room for it to expand and contract without essentially telegraphing through to your shingles.
And then what is that great big thing back behind, I guess, between the joists and the rafters?
Yeah, that's actually an engineered beam that's called a glue lam. So that's a bunch of 2x4s that are glued together because there's a lot of weight coming down on that point. As you can see, we don't have any interior walls there. So what that does is it acts like a giant header that's then transferring that weight to our 2 outside walls.
So we got beams, we got rafters, we got joists, and it looks like these joists and rafters are about 16 to 24 inches on center. Is that the norm?
Yep, it's about 24 inches on center is the norm. Sometimes by, again, how much weight's there, we have to maybe shrink that down to 16 on center, but that's pretty typical.
And I notice sometimes we use 2x4s, sometimes 2x6s, 2x8s. It's all engineered, right?
Right, yep, it's all engineered, and the size of the lumber just kind of dictates by the amount of span.
You know, this is exciting. You know, there are hammers, and then there are hammers. And we're going to really dig into hammers. Let's start. Izzy?
So this one, I guess, just looks like a pretty normal one, so it might be just a good place to start.
Yeah, if you've only ever used one hammer in your life, chances are it is this hammer.
I own one of those.
Yep, and this is what we call a claw hammer. So that's got a very pronounced claw on the back side here. So this is your traditional hammer. It's got several parts and pieces to it that you'll see through the rest of it. But again, this is probably your most household common hammer.
And you were saying you'd recommend I use that one. I wasn't sure what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
so the hammers are actually starting to get a little more fancy. And at the very top of this one here, there's a magnet on there. And then there's a spot where you can actually put a nail right to it. Remember when you hurt your thumb earlier?
Yeah.
Now, this starts the nail for you, and you can hammer it right in.
Wow,
Yep.
that's nice. Tell me a little bit about what's the difference when you look at this style then.
Yeah, so this is probably the second most common hammer, and you can see that claw's a little different. This is called a rip hammer, or maybe traditionally more of a framing hammer. Heavier than that one, a little bit better for demo. But again, it's got pretty much all the same parts and pieces, so not a whole lot of difference there. Just, again, this is about, and they do hammers in ounces. This is a 16-ounce hammer, this is a 22-ounce hammer, a little more oomph, but this will wear you out a lot quicker, harder to have that control on some of the more finesse hammering you need to do.
Now I've got one of these in my car. I use them for putting in signs, but what exactly are you talking about when you look at this one?
Yeah, so this one is very light, but it looks very substantial, and this is a rubber mallet. So this whole top piece here, the head, is actually made out of rubber. Sometimes you need to really whack on something, but you don't want to damage it. That's where a rubber mallet comes into play. So it's kind of like a light-duty sledgehammer that can use for, again, pretty much anything that you don't want to maybe leave a mar behind or any kind of marks.
I've got one at home. I never did know what to do with it. But anyway, hey, what about these two hammers? What do we got here?
Yeah, so these are, as you can see, much larger hammers. Both of them are a little bit on the light side, but as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, sometimes you need a little bit more leverage or at that point there. So these are longer handles, so these are mainly demo hammers.
Looks like I can tenderize meat with this one. Look at all those waffle.
Yeah, so this is called a milled head or a waffle head, and essentially what that is for is when you're nailing on a hammer or even trying to hit a 2x4, that grabs. It's got a lot more traction.
Yeah, it would.
So it won't slip off as easily as some of the smooth heads that we saw on some of maybe the claw hammers.
Okay, looks like we got a toy hammer in here, Luke.
Yeah.
Is that a toy?
It does look like a toy, and it's very, very light.
It
so,
is.
As we mentioned, some of these are meant for demo work. This is meant for very, very tiny things like...
It's not a toy.
No, it's not a toy. So maybe nailing some of the more smaller nails. But typically, we call this an upholstery hammer. So this is meant for furniture, nailing on tiny
Small
little tacks,
nails.
or and there's a couple magnet pieces in here that helps you pick up some of those smaller nails that are maybe sometimes hard to actually grab with your fingertips.
Here's a weird hammer. It's got a round end on it, like a head or something. I don't know.
I think most people probably have a hammer like this in their toolbox too. This is a ball peen hammer, and essentially what it was used for was metal work. So back in the day when they were forging, metal or steel, they would actually use the ballpoint end here to actually create, divots or create, some of the actual design or how they want it to be shaped. And then when they were ready to hammer it out, they'd flip it on the backside with that flat surface, hammer it out, and get that cold hard steel finish.
Ball peen. Is it true that when you hit the metal with that, it goes peen? Is that why you...
It could be because you're hitting metal on metal.
I don't know.
But this is actually a much harder head than any of the other heads that we've shown you there because it's meant for metal.
Got 3 different ones here. Take a look at these.
Yeah, so these, as you can see, all kind of look like hatchets or axes.
They do.
But they all have a purpose. So this one and this one are mainly used for drywall. And it's got that hatchet side, so that way, let's say they need to cut out an electrical box or shave up a piece of drywall, they flip it over and they can cut very quickly to it. And then it's got more of a curved head on that so they can set those nails down. But you'll see that there's actually a notch
I
in
see
these
that, yes.
too. So, and some of the claw hammers will have notches as well. They put that notch in there because that's another area where you can actually hook onto a nail and pull it out. The claw hammers have it, even though they still have that claw, because some of those small nails are really, really hard to get to, and it's a smaller notch.
Okay. And then this one is very odd looking.
Yeah, so this one is actually a roofing hammer. And it still has that edge on it because there's, we typically use asphalt shingles around here, but there are places that use clay or slate tile. This hatchet side will allow them to break that harder shingle very, very quickly. But then in our territory, where we use the asphalt shingles quite a bit, this is actually a razor blade.
It's adjustable.
Yeah, it's adjustable.
Nice.
They can adjust it, and they can actually like run right down the eave of the roof, and they can cut all that extra shingle off, making a nice straight line.
Very practical hammer. Then I got two more left here. Very heavy hammers.
Yeah, they are, and these are mini sledgehammers. Izzy's got the larger sledgehammer there. You can see there's a couple differences between the two. This one's kind of got a pointed end. These are mainly meant for demo work. But this one here is a little bit different than that one because it does have that pointed edge, but then also inside here, it's actually been forged so that way there's material in here that when you're swinging this and hitting it, all of that weight transfers here.
Down. Wow.
Yep, so you're getting the most bang out of your buck. That one there is a solid piece, and it's a little bit heavier than this one here. But this one here, sometimes you'll hit it, and it'll actually bounce because you don't have all that weight centered off of there, which we've all been there probably where you're using a sledge and it hits the side of something and ricochets off and hits you. Doesn't feel good.
No.
Okay, well, there you have it. All you want to know about hammers and then some.
In our industry, we hear the term penny nail. Now, I know what a penny is, but how does that relate to a nail?
Yeah, so we actually rate, and you can see these three nails here. This is a 4D nail, an 8D nail, and a 6D nail. Do you know what the D stands for?
Now, D must come from the 1400s where their money was a denarius, so D is just a short name for it.
Right, so essentially that'd be like a 4-penny nail, or an 8-penny nail, or a 16-penny nail. And the way that it worked is actually a 4D nail, back in the 1400s, is you'd actually have to pay 4 pennies, or 4 denariuses, for 100 of these nails. So the 8 one, you have to pay 8 denarius for 100 of those, and then so on and so forth. So the 16, again, 16 denarius.
So it comes into sizing too, because the bigger the nail, the more you pay, so it was a higher number.
Correct, yep. Now, we obviously, it costs more than a penny to get 100 of these. So now it's all just about the length of it. So a 4D nail is going to be about 1.5 inches long. 8D nail will be 2.5 inches long, and a 16 is about 3.5 inches long. Now, it's a crazy equation of how they actually come with those, but our framers, the guys in the industry, they know if you hear a 16D nail, you know it's a 3.5 inch long nail.
Now, these nails all look different. These are for trimming, is that correct?
Yeah, so these would be just kind of standard nails. That any job you would need a nail for, these are what you'd typically see. Then over here we got 2 smaller nails, and those are your trim nails. So this is an exterior one, and it's coated for, like your fascia, so that would be a white fascia, and that's not going to rust. Any of these other nails, if you put them on the exterior, would rust, but it's got a very small head, and it's only holding up a very, very lightweight object. And then this would be an interior trim nail. Again, a very small head because you don't want that trim, that nice trim to show, exactly.
And then we move down, we're getting into roofing nails and other nails that go into the home.
Yep, so this first one is actually a drywall nail, and it's got a little bit larger head because it's holding the weight of that drywall up, but then that head is actually kind of concave over. So that way they can get that in there and it gets set and we can do a nice coat of mud over the top. The roofing nail also has a large head. And that is a very lightweight nail. Again, it's not holding a lot of weight, but that width of that head is going to help with the wind load. So if there's any wind that gets under that roof, it's not going to pull that nail out.
Now, what is this nail?
Yeah, this nail is actually a neat one because it's got 2 heads on it. That's actually a concrete form nail. So they actually nail it to the first head where it stops, and then those nails are constantly getting pulled out and then put back in. So that allows them to get that claw right over the top of it and pop it out really easy. There's no chance of them overdriving that nail.
This is a really different nail here.
Yeah, so this one here is a masonry nail. So we can actually use nails to actually go into brick, mortar, concrete, anything of that nature, and that's what a masonry nail was. So it's got a very, very hard casing around it and a very, very sharp point to be able to get into that masonry.
And the last one here?
Last one here has got a cap on that nail, so essentially it's a cap nail. And that is for like our house wrap. You put that cap nail on it, and again, there's not a lot of weight with the house wrap, it's just holding it in place. So that cap essentially keeps that nail from tearing through that product.
These are such an important part of construction. Like we mentioned earlier, a 1,200 square foot house could have 12,000 nails, so very important to know what these are. It's amazing when we go to frame a house how quickly it goes. Within 3 to 5 days, we could have a whole house completely framed, and this helps with that process, doesn't it?
One of the few tools that sped that process up very, very quickly. Obviously, you can still hammer this way, but it is very labor intensive and it's very time consuming. So, and plus, not only you get your finger in there, you pinch your finger, it hurts. This is a pneumatic nailer. Pneumatic essentially just means that it is powered by air, and it's got an air hose on it. So there's a compressor on the other end of this air hose that's just pushing compressed air there, and then every time you drive a nail, it just shoots out a little bit of that air. So it speeds the process up very, very quickly.
Wow, this is heavy too, so I have a whole new level of appreciation for the people who use this all day, every day.
Yeah, and they've been using these now for about 40 to 50 years, and every year it seems like they come out with another nailer that can use one of these other type of nails. So the roofing nail, they have a special a pneumatic roofing nailer. They have a cap nail gun for it now. So they're coming out with all these tools that are just speeding up the process and again, making it better and safer for the guys out in the field.
You know, Lonnie, a wise man once told me, measure once, cut twice.
Yeah, I kind of like that. I kind of like that. You know, I don't need this. Let's do it right, guys. Come on. All right.
Awesome.
All right, we're done.
That'll about do it, right?
We're done?
All right, let's check it out. Let's see it.
Whoa, guys!
What in the world? Oh my goodness.
So much for my treehouse.
You know, guys, a lot of the inventions have really helped our business, like the pneumatic gun, for example.
yeah.
But there's a lot of inventions that have come along the way that have really changed things. I'm thinking of the wheel. Think about cars and trucks and trains. This is what got the world rolling.
Oh,
The wheel.
Lonnie.
You think that was a good one, Lonnie? I think it was actually the shovel because it was truly groundbreaking.
Groundbreaking.
Worst corny jokes I've
come
ever
on, guys.
heard.
I think it was the broom. The broom really swept the nation.
No. It was the hammer because it really nailed it.
If we're talking about something that changed the world as we know it, it has to be the cell phone, from what I've heard.
Oh, brother.
Okay, I'm going to
yeah.
apologize to the audience.
Stop
This was
this.
the worst play on words I've ever had. We better close the show and get out of here before somebody throws something.
Okay.
Elizabeth, would you go ahead and close for us?
Sure, it's been a lot of fun today. If you'd like to know a little bit about who we are, what we do, and why we do what we do so well, please pick up the phone, or better yet, come in our showroom. We'd love to talk to you about building your own custom home.
Okay, you guys are going to have to clean this up. Our framers
luck.
are really going to be upset with this.
You know what? I got an appointment, guys. Have fun.
We got to cut again. We got
This
to
is
cut
supposed
again.
to be a treehouse. So we want to prevent air infiltration and pet infestation. We don't want your pets coming in into the house.
Pets are not allowed in the house.
Them small little chihuahuas could, you know.
Those little ankle biters come in.
It'll actually ricochet off, and I'm sure we've all been there where it's ricocheted off and it hits you in the knee or the shin.
Yeah, been
Man,
there.
that hurts like an OSB.
OSB. Oh. Hey, thank you, Lou, for helping us on the subject of hammers.
He did. That's the joke.
Lonnie's never heard that.
He said OSB. I thought,
Oh, that's awesome. That was so great. I was waiting for that one.
One more thing to say.